Over the years, we've had some pretty big requests for very specific games to be reviewed on Bullet Heaven. Zero Gunner 2 and a handful of Wii games come immediately to mind, and yes, the Wii reviews will happen someday, we promise. Most recently, though, a number of you out there have been asking about a PC shmup called Pawarumi, a shooting game with a distinct Peruvian flavor. Pawarumi is a single-player vertical shmup that was developed by manufacturer 43 and published on January 30th, 2018. Taking inspiration from ancient South American civilization and throwing it into an anthro-futuristic setting, yeah, I made that up, Pawarumi aims to add depth to its core gameplay with a simple yet complex central feature. Let's take a closer look. The gameplay setup in Pawarumi is fairly simple. Players move about the screen with either 8-way digital control or full analog control, allowing for fine-tuned movement via an analog-style controller. Digital control moves the player at full speed, but the left trigger on an Xbox-style pad allows the player to break their speed for finer movement. Analog works better than digital in this case, but no matter the method, it feels a tiny bit slippery in very frantic situations. Players also have immediate access to all of their craft's weapons to start. The A button on an Xbox-style controller fires green rapid shots derived from the spirit of the snake. The A button activates red homing shots drawn from the spirit of the panther, which lock on by way of a cone of vision, and finally, the X button launches a blue laser representing the spirit of the condor. To top it all off, the Y button activates a powerful bomber attack that clears enemy bullets and homes in on all enemies for huge damage. That's literally all there is to the control, but the three weapon colors that players have at their disposal are central to the core mechanics of Pawarumi. Most enemies in the game are also one of these three colors, and attacking them with any of the three weapons that the players have access to will affect the game in a few ways. There are three main functions to any of the attacks used by the player: Crush, Boost, and Drain. Crush is the player's surest bet when trying to destroy enemies quickly and efficiently. Blue enemies are weak to red shots, green to blue, and red to green. Crush will inflict double damage to any enemy hit by its Crush weakness. The player's special bomber has multiple levels of charge to a maximum of 3. When used, the whole gauge will be depleted and will need to be recharged. Attacking with an enemy's drain color will fill this gauge according to how many hits are landed of the appropriate color. Red shots will charge from green enemies, as will red from blue and blue from red. Especially in the case of bosses, knowing how to reclaim power for special attacks is very handy in making fast progress. Finally, players have a life gauge that will deplete as players are hit. There are no pickups or extends in Pawarumi, and no extra credits to continue from where the players may have died. They'll have to restart from the very beginning of the game, but using boost attacks can help players reclaim lost life. Boosting is easy, simply shoot an enemy with the same colored attacks that they are. It takes a bit of time and effort, but players can fairly easily reclaim lost life in this manner. It's pretty important to maintain a high life count as well. The player's life gauge will not refill between stages. There's one catch to boosting though. Enemies that are having life leached from them will attack with more powerful, faster fire, so care should obviously be taken. When any of these three main attacks are used, the player's ship will change form, allowing players to see, at a glance, what weapon they currently have selected. The UI at the bottom of the screen will also shift according to what form is being used. It will tell the player what colored enemies will drain, boost, or crush at a glance. Pawarumi is played over the course of 5 stages, each with a fairly decent length. Playing on easy, however, will limit the player to only the first 4 stages. Additionally, the stage order for these first 4 stages is also altered from normal and above. It takes a bit of time to get used to what colors do what against what enemies, and bosses can be pretty challenging too, but over time, players will definitely be able to make some decent progress in the game. Throughout the game, there are a number of segments that test a player's technical ability, requiring very specific attacks on specific colors or enemies, which definitely breaks up the typical shooting formula in a moderate fashion. There aren't many of these parts, but it's a good change of pace, if sometimes a little confusing when the pressure is on. If a player needs practice in a specific stage, training mode allows players to take Pawarumi on one stage at a time, to better get the hang of any stage of their choosing. There are some issues though. Pawarumi plays pretty smoothly for the most part, but it's obvious that a really beefy system is going to be required in order to play Pawarumi flawlessly all the way through. Especially in the pyramid stage, the mid portion slows down way too much, even when not recording. It seems as if this section isn't very well optimized, especially since the rest of the game runs smoothly without a hitch, while our recording software is active. And to a lesser extent, as stated before, the color system takes a while to really get used to. And it can also be really frustrating and quite confusing on the outset, especially with some portions of the game requiring puzzle-style enemy elimination with very specific attacks on enemy units, be it Crush, Drain, or Boost, well mixed in with other enemy colors. It's still a decently fun game in the end though, and it definitely serves up a challenge for those looking for a change of pace, though veterans might find it a little easy. In a lot of ways, it has similarities to Radiant Silvergun and Ikaruga with its tricolor system and its crush and drain mechanics. But a lack of color chain mechanics and bullet eating keeps Pawarumi more distant than close in these respects. Pawarumi has a scoring system in place that has its complexities but doesn't seem to be especially evident at first glance. There are no multipliers, chains, combos, or even points visible on screen for the most part, and with no power-ups or item drops, no meddling or max power bonuses exist either. Instead, Pawarumi will reward the player through crush bonuses and bullet collision. Killing off enemies with their crush weakness will reward the player with a higher kill value than other methods, but at the same time it takes less time and fewer shots to get the job done. Using boost shots to draw out the time it takes to kill an enemy or boss segment can result in more points, since many more bullet collisions will occur as a result. The intensified enemy attacks can make this approach much riskier though. The only exception to Pawarumi's non-multiplier clause is the player's bomber, which will display a hit counter when activated. The higher the counter, the higher the bonus. Using a fully powered bomber in really crowded areas or against bosses will result in great bonuses for the player. When it all comes down to brass tacks, all of these score mechanics should allow players to climb in the leaderboards fairly easily. Multiple leaderboards exist by difficulty, and the player can even see at a glance what position they are in, with real-time rankings showing beside the player's score. It adds a decent amount of replayability, which should extend Pawarumi's playtime beyond its shortish campaign. Pawarumi definitely has a pretty unique style to its presentation. Immediately, the game's visuals stand out with good atmospherics and decent environmental effects. There's a good amount of bloom effect to the lighting, decent shadow effects, and some great backgrounds along the way. There are also some cool subtle details like each weapon's associated spirit animal briefly appearing when the player's weapons are fired. Sound-wise, the music is decently composed with a good amount of atmosphere. Some pieces sound very familiar though. It's really hard not to hear Cyan's theme from Final Fantasy VI in the Stage 1 track. Pawarumi's sound effects are satisfying as well, with nothing coming off as irritating or annoying. All of the player's weapons are subtle yet present, and alerts for the player's life and special weapons gauges are clear and easy to hear. Pawarumi's story is a little on the simple side, but with great painted art accentuated by brief flashback imagery. Pawarumi tells the story of Asho, the pilot of the legendary ship Chukaru. In her fight against the Council, her story is told over the course of Pawarumi's 5 stages, with a different ending for each difficulty level. A number of options exist in Pawarumi that allow the player to balance their visual and sound effects as well as the ability to change their control scheme. Screen shake, HUD opacity, language, and more can be fiddled with and tweaked. All good, but while we liked how Pawarumi looks and sounds for the most part, it does feel as if there's something missing to the overall vibe. It might sound a little ironic, but it feels as if Pawarumi is lacking in personality, despite its unique South American theme and really good artistic and sound design. We just can't put our finger on what it is, but at the very least, Pawarumi's presentation is satisfactory, but maybe just a little too generic. Rounding out the presentation are a number of Steam achievements for completionists and Steam trading cards for collectors. In the end though, how does Pawarumi stack up? Let's take a look. The controls in Pawarumi feel decent, but can be a bit squirrely in places. The color matching can be a bit confusing on the outset, but having each weapon color correspond to the colors on the player's controller buttons on an Xbox pad can help. Pawarumi has a good amount of challenge, but being able to recover life at any given time, with a small amount of skill, will surely give veterans an easy pass. Pawarumi has only 5 stages, though they are moderately lengthy. With a different ending for each difficulty level, not to mention score chasing, there's a moderate amount of replay here, but not much. The visuals in Pawarumi are great on a technical level, but kind of lack a bit of personality in ways we can't really describe. The cutscenes and backgrounds look great though. Just like the visuals, the sound in Pawarumi is great on a technical level, but something feels a bit lacking. Great sound effects never annoy. The Pawarumi voice clip in the intro is a little cheesy though. With both strong similarities and clear differences from games like Radiant Silvergun and Ikaruga, Pawarumi does a good job of taking a simple concept and making a decently deep game out of it. Pawarumi is about $17 US on Steam. It's a moderate cost for what it offers, but still a good value. Pawarumi is a good enough game in the end, but we couldn't help feel that it was maybe a little less complicated than we would have liked outside of the initial confusion with the color system. A lack of a well-defined scoring function leaves us wanting something a little more robust, even if the core game mechanics are fun, once you get used to them. Pawarumi gets a 3.75 out of 5. You can get a copy of Pawarumi on Steam today for about $17 US. So, we have people out there in certain places saying that we think all of the games that we review are quote-unquote solid. It is bullet heaven after all. Pff, I beg to differ. Here are some games that we thought were actually pretty bad.